The story begins with a small boy named Aaron, only 8 years old, standing outside a grand music hall that looked nothing like the world he came from. The building was large, shiny, and covered in golden lights that reflected like stars on its glass doors. Expensive cars were parked outside, and people in elegant clothes walked proudly toward the entrance. Aaron stood still for a moment, holding his breath. He had never been inside such a place. His clothes were simple, his shoes slightly worn, and his hair not styled like the other children. Anyone looking at him could tell immediately he did not belong among the polished and wealthy. When he finally stepped inside, everything felt even bigger. The walls were high, the floor clean enough to mirror shoes, and the ceiling sparkled with chandeliers like the night sky. Families filled the hall, laughing, talking, fixing their children's suits and dresses. Little girls wore shiny shoes and boys carried polished instruments. Their parents stood behind them like proud soldiers, pushing confidence into their children with encouraging smiles. But Aaron had no parent behind him. He arrived alone, carrying nothing but hope in his small heart. While other children were surrounded by excitement and support, he stood quietly near the corner, holding the registration paper in his hand. He felt every stare, every whisper, every quick glance that said he didn't match the room. His shirt was plain, his hands a little rough, his bag old and faded from being used too long. People noticed and they judged. A group of mothers looked at him, then at each other, hiding tiny giggles behind their hands. One leaned toward another and whispered something that made them both smile, not in a kind way. Aaron heard the laughter but pretended he didn't. He kept his eyes on the floor, trying to look invisible, but even silence could not hide him. He stood out like a pencil in a box full of diamonds. Other children noticed too. Some stared with curiosity, others with confusion, and a few with straight amusement, as if they already decided he would fail. Aaron felt his throat tighten, but he forced himself to breathe. He didn't come to fit in. He came for the piano. The stage inside the hall was beautiful dark wood, polished, glowing under warm golden light. A magnificent grand piano sat in the center, its surface shining like black glass. It looked powerful, elegant, and intimidating at the same time. Aaron's heart trembled when he saw it, not from fear, but from a feeling too big to explain: love, longing, destiny. He wanted to touch those keys more than anything in the world. To him, that piano was not just an instrument. It was a dream made real. One of the judges walked by with papers in hand, wearing a suit that looked like it cost more than everything Aaron owned. The judge did not smile at him. Instead, he raised an eyebrow as if wondering how a boy like Aaron found his way here. Aaron quickly looked away, pretending to study the floor tiles just to avoid those cold eyes. He moved toward an empty seat quietly. Even sitting down felt like a challenge, as if every chair belonged to someone richer, someone more polished, someone more expected. Aaron placed his hands on his knees to stop them from shaking. He told himself he deserved to be here. He had worked hard, practiced alone, believed silently in his own fingers. But confidence is not easy when the world around you is looking for cracks. As he waited for his turn, names of other children were announced one by one. They walked to the stage with proud steps, played confidently, and received polite applause. Their parents clapped loudest, smiling wide, certain their child was the star. Aaron watched them, his heart racing, not from jealousy but from hope. If they could play there, maybe he could too. Maybe talent mattered more than money. Maybe dreams were allowed even for the poor. But every time he thought that, another person looked at him with those same judging eyes, eyes that said you don't belong here. Aaron felt like a small note in a grand symphony, easily ignored. Still, he refused to leave. He had come too far, hoped too much, practiced too long. Even if they laughed, even if they doubted, he would walk to that piano when his name was finally called. He straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin just a little, held his breath, trying to hold together every piece of courage inside him. The hall around him shimmered with wealth and privilege, but he sat there like a spark waiting to become fire. No one knew what he carried inside his hands. No one imagined that the smallest boy in the room might hold the biggest sound. In a place where he did not fit, Aaron remained still and silent, but inside him a storm of music was waiting. Every heartbeat whispered one message: you do not need to fit the room. You only need to play. And soon, the moment would come when the world that mocked him would witness something they never expected, something that would turn laughter into awe and doubt into standing applause. Aaron lived in a tiny old house at the edge of town, far away from the lights, the polished floors, and the grand stage he saw today. His world was different, smaller, quieter, and full of struggle. The walls of his room had cracks, the roof leaked when it rained, and sometimes dinner was just bread and tea. But nothing in his life mattered more than music. When he talked about the piano, his eyes shined like warm lanterns in darkness. He didn't own a piano, they could never afford one. Instead, Aaron practiced on a second-hand keyboard with half-working keys. Some notes were missing, some stuck when pressed too hard, but Aaron loved it like treasure. Every night after finishing homework, he turned it on, sat straight, and played until sleep pulled his eyelids down. His mother would sometimes peek through the door and watch quietly, tears in her tired eyes, not because she was sad, but because music made her boy look alive. Aaron's mother worked long hours in a local shop, earning just enough to keep the house running. She could not give Aaron nice clothes, expensive shoes, or music lessons like other children received. But she gave him love, strong, patient, enduring love, the kind that survives hunger and hardship. Aaron never once complained about what he lacked. Instead, he found joy in every small thing. A warm blanket in winter, a bowl of soup shared between them, and the keyboard that filled the house with soft sound. He learned music differently from other kids. He never had a teacher, no notes, no lessons, only his ears and his heart. At night, he listened to classical recordings borrowed from the library. His favorite pieces were Beethoven, Chopin, Uruma melodies that carried feelings stronger than words. Aaron would close his eyes and listen, absorbing every detail, every rise and fall of notes like a secret language. The next day, he tried to copy them on his keyboard, slowly, mistake by mistake, learning like a bird learning to fly. Some days he played so beautifully that even the broken keyboard sounded like something magical. Other days he failed, frustrated, but he never stopped. He believed that every mistake was just a step closer to music. And music to him was not just sound, it was his escape. It was the only time he didn't feel poor, small, or different. When his fingers moved, he was powerful even if the world didn't know it yet. Aaron kept his dreams silent, like a treasure hidden inside his chest. People at school mocked him for having nothing. Kids with rich parents laughed at his old uniform and torn shoes. Sometimes he sat alone during lunch, eating slowly, pretending the noise didn't hurt. But every time the world tried to break him, he returned home, touched his keyboard, and rebuilt himself with melody. One evening, his mother came home with a paper in her hand, an announcement for a children's piano competition in the city. The grand hall, shiny stage, real piano, everything he dreamed of. The moment he read it, something exploded inside him like fireworks made of hope. But along with hope came fear. He knew children with teachers, classes, and perfect pianos would participate. He had none of that. Still, his mother placed her hand on his head and said softly, "Aaron, dreams are not only for the rich." Those words stayed with him like a heartbeat, so he practiced harder than ever. He woke before sunrise, fingers cold but determined. He practiced after midnight when the world slept. He played until his small arms ached, until music flowed through him like electricity. The keyboard keys slowly wore down, but his skill only grew sharper. Every night he imagined standing on a real stage, not in front of a cracked wall, but under bright lights, playing a grand piano that echoed like thunder. The day of the competition arrived sooner than he expected. His mother ironed his old shirt carefully and stitched his trousers again so they looked neat. She smiled at him even though worry hid behind her eyes. She could not protect him from judgment, from laughter, from the world that valued money more than talent, but she could give him the courage to face it. When Aaron stepped into the grand hall that day, he walked with every memory of hardship behind him, every cold night, every missing key on the keyboard, every time someone said a boy like him could never shine. He entered with hope, he entered with fire. He entered with a dream strong enough to shake rooms. People inside the hall did not know who he was, where he came from, or how much he sacrificed to stand there. They only saw his clothes, his shoes, his nervous hands, and they judged him instantly. But Aaron didn't come to impress them with appearance. He came to speak through music. And the music inside him waited like a storm behind clouds, silent for now, but ready to thunder when his turn finally arrived. The grand hall buzzed with excitement as the competition moved forward. Parents whispered proudly about their children's performances. Judges marked their papers, maintaining serious faces. Cameras flashed, lights glowed warm and golden across the polished wooden stage. Aaron sat quietly, small hands resting on his knees, waiting for his turn. His heart beat loud, not from fear, but from a dream begging to be heard. Child after child walked to the piano. Some played confidently, fingers steady as machines. Others hesitated, forgetting notes halfway, but still received gentle applause. Every performer had someone cheering for them, a mother, a father, an instructor who stood near the stage and mouthed the notes along with them. Aaron had only his dream. When the announcer read out the next name, Aaron's stomach twisted. Any moment now, his name could come. He rubbed his palms together to stop the shaking. His throat felt dry like dust. But his eyes, though nervous, stayed fixed on the piano. It wasn't just an instrument to him, it was a doorway, a world, a promise. And then it happened. The hall quieted. A soft voice spoke through the microphone. Next performer, Aaron Hale. A few heads turned. People looked around, trying to see who the unfamiliar name belonged to. Slowly, Aaron stood up. His chair made a small sound on the shiny floor, loud enough for Rose to notice the boy who rose from the far back, not from the front where confident children sat. A ripple of whispers moved like wind, that one. The boy in plain clothes. Is he really competing? Aaron felt those whispers like stones hitting his back, but he kept walking. Step by step through rows of expensive shoes and polished confidence, his worn-out soles moved forward. He walked alone, yet every step carried years of dreams, struggles, practice, hope. He reached the stairs leading to the stage. His hands trembled as he placed his foot on the first step. The light above felt blinding. For a moment he stopped, not because he wanted to run, but because the dream finally felt real. All the nights at the broken keyboard, all the times hunger tried to silence him, all the times people laughed, they all led him here. He inhaled deeply and continued. As he walked toward the piano, the audience noticed more clearly. His shirt was faded, one button mismatched, his trousers slightly short, shoes scuffed from years of use. Some people raised eyebrows. A boy near the front chuckled. A woman whispered something to her friend and both smirked. Laughter, small at first, slipped into the room like a cold breeze. More people joined, not loud, not cruel, but enough to be felt in the bones. Aaron heard it, of course he did. Laughter is impossible to ignore when it is meant for you, but he didn't stop, he didn't look back. His eyes stayed on the piano like he was walking toward the sun. The laughter stung, but his dream burned brighter. He finally reached the bench and sat, legs barely touching the floor, back straight, fingers hovering just above the keys. Someone whispered loudly enough for many to hear, "He won't last 10 seconds. Soft chuckles followed. Judges exchanged glances, one even leaned back in his seat as if preparing to witness a failure. But Aaron didn't look at them. He didn't need anyone to believe. He only needed to play. He placed his hands gently on the keys. They felt different, smoother, richer, alive. He had played only on a broken keyboard at home, but this piano felt like it carried centuries of stories. For a moment he closed his eyes and saw his mother watching, smiling through exhaustion. He heard rain on the tin roof, felt cold nights spent practicing, remembered hunger, remembered hope. Then he breathed, deep, slow, focused. And with that breath he began. His first note was soft, trembling like a candle flame. A few people in the crowd leaned back, expecting mistakes, but Aaron did not stop. His fingers remembered the songs he taught himself in silence, the notes carved into his heart, the music that saved him over and over. His hands traveled gently across the keys, unsure, then steady. The laughter faded slightly, then it stopped, because something unexpected happened. The boy who didn't fit the room suddenly belonged to the music. The hall, once filled with whispers and smirks, began to fall silent, not out of politeness, but out of disbelief. Aaron's second note flowed into a third, richer and clearer than anyone imagined possible from a boy with no lessons. His melody began to grow, soft but powerful, fragile yet unstoppable. The audience leaned forward. Judges straightened in their seats. Those who laughed stopped breathing. No one expected what was about to unfold, the miracle hidden inside a poor boy's hands. And this was only the beginning. When Aaron played the first few bars, the room felt unsure, like air holding its breath. But with every passing second, something remarkable began to happen. The soft, uncertain notes turned into a flowing river of sound. His fingers moved like they were made for the piano, not trained by teachers, but guided by something deeper. A soul that had lived more music than any wealthy student in the room. The audience, which just moments ago laughed and whispered, slowly began leaning forward in disbelief. Even the children who mocked him stopped fiddling with their clothes and sat still, eyes fixed on the stage. The mothers who once raised eyebrows now lowered their hands from their mouths, their mocking smiles fading into awe. Aaron was no longer a poor boy sitting at a grand piano. He was a storyteller. Every key he touched spoke a language beyond words, a language of struggle, hope, hunger, nights of practice, dreams too big for his tiny roof. His left hand flowed gently while the right danced, painting pictures through sound. His music rose and fell like waves, sometimes soft as a whisper, sometimes powerful as thunder echoing across mountains. The hall listened, truly listened. A judge who first doubted him slowly removed his glasses, his eyes widening. Another judge leaned closer to the stage, pen forgotten in hand. They were trying to understand how a boy with no formal training could play like this, how someone with worn shoes could produce beauty beyond expensive lessons. Aaron didn't see the shock around him. His eyelids were lowered, face calm, body still like he didn't exist outside the music. He forgot the laughter. He forgot the room. He forgot fear. He became the melody, letting it guide him instead of thinking. It felt like the keys were old friends returning to him, like every note was something he had been waiting years to release. A woman in the second row brought her hand to her chest, eyes wet with tears she didn't expect. Music has a strange power. It can open wounds and heal them in the same moment. Aaron's music did both. It peeled away pride, ego, and judgment, replacing it with something softer, admiration, respect, wonder. Soon there was not a single sound in the audience, no coughs, no whispers, not even breath too loud. The hall was silent enough to hear the soft click of each piano pedal under Aaron's foot, The world seemed frozen while he played. Even the chandeliers appeared to wait, glittering like stars watching a miracle. Halfway through the piece, Aaron lifted the intensity. His fingers moved faster, bolder, confident like wings carrying him higher. What began as quiet rainfall turned into a storm of emotion. His body swayed gently with the rhythm, not taught by anyone, just natural, honest expression. The audience watched like they were witnessing magic. Some had goosebumps. Others blinked tears away, embarrassed to feel something so deeply from a child they once judged. And then the final part of the song approached. Aaron's hands slowed, notes softened like feathers falling from the sky. The melody thinned, delicate and full of light like dawn breaking after a long night. Each note dissolved into silence like a drop of water into stillness. In that moment, the hall was not just quiet, it was sacred. Aaron ended with a single, gentle chord, simple, warm, beautiful. His fingers hovered in the air for a moment before pulling back. The sound faded slowly, like the final whisper of a story not told with words but with heart. He exhaled. Only then did he realize he had been holding his breath for the last few bars. His small chest rose and fell rapidly. His hands trembled not from fear, but from the weight of releasing a dream he held too tightly for too long. And then, silence, not cold, not mocking, but heavy with emotion. The room, filled minutes ago with laughter and disbelief, now sat frozen in wonder. People stared at the boy, the piano, each other, as if they needed time to understand what they had heard. A child from poverty had just played better than trained prodigies. Talent had just stepped over wealth like light over shadow. Someone in the back whispered, "Was that real?" Another responded, voice breaking, "That boy, he's brilliant." What? A moment later, applause exploded. Not soft, not polite, thunderous. People stood from their seats. Judges clapped harder than anyone. Parents who once laughed now wiped tears discreetly. The hall that doubted him now celebrated him. The boy who didn't fit the room now owned it. Aaron sat still, eyes wide, overwhelmed. He didn't expect applause this big. He didn't expect people to stand. All he hoped for was to play, but instead he changed hearts. He proved that talent isn't bought, it's born. He proved that dreams don't need wealth, just courage. And his journey was only just beginning. The sound of applause hit Aaron like a wave, loud, endless, overflowing with emotion. It was the kind of applause that lifts a person off the ground without touching them. People clapped not because they were supposed to, but because they could not stop themselves. It was respect, shock, admiration, redemption. Aaron sat frozen for a moment, unsure what to do. He had imagined playing, but he had never imagined this. His hands shook lightly above his lap, his heart raced faster than before. He slowly stood up and the clapping grew even louder. The entire hall rose to its feet, parents, judges, musicians, everyone. A standing ovation for a poor boy no one believed in minutes ago. Some children who laughed earlier now clapped with wide eyes, unable to look away. A few looked embarrassed, wishing they had not judged him so quickly. Some even whispered to their parents, "He's amazing, I want to play like him." What? Aaron bowed, small and shy, but this time he didn't bow out of fear. He bowed with pride, soft pride, humble pride, pride earned by effort, not money. The judges spoke quietly among themselves, faces bright with shock. One judge, the strictest looking of them all, stood first and stepped toward the stage. He motioned for Aaron to come closer. Aaron walked slowly, still unsure what would happen next. The judge leaned down slightly, eyes full of respect. "You play like someone who has lived music," he said gently. "Who taught you?" Aaron swallowed, his voice was soft but steady. "No one, sir, I learned by listening." The judge blinked, stunned. "Self-taught?" "Yes." "What? You mean you've never taken lessons?" Aaron shook his head. The hall gasped quietly. No lessons, no teacher. Everyone knew how expensive piano classes were and how much discipline they required. Yet here stood a boy who played better than students with years of professional training. Another judge, a woman with silver earrings, stepped forward next. "Child, you may not know this yet, but what you did here today was extraordinary." What? Aaron looked down shyly, cheeks warm. "Thank you." She smiled, a real one, like someone looking at a hidden gem finally brought into light. Aaron was suddenly surrounded. Organizers, musicians, parents, people who ignored him earlier now wanted to speak to him. A little girl asked if he could teach her. A boy his age clapped him on the shoulder, saying, "You were incredible. I wish I could play like that." Aaron's heart softened. For the first time in his life, he felt seen, not as the poor kid, not as the boy with old clothes, but as someone valuable, someone talented, someone who belonged. But there was one face missing, his mother. If she could see this moment, hear this applause, feel this victory. His heart ached with both joy and longing. He wished she were there to witness her sacrifice bloom into something beautiful. He promised himself he would tell her every detail when he returned home. Just then, one of the judges lifted the microphone. The hall fell silent again. The man cleared his throat and announced, Aaron Hale has delivered one of the most remarkable performances we have ever witnessed in this competition. The hall applauded again louder. The judge continued, "It is not the clothing, nor wealth, nor background that determines talent, but the heart. And today this boy reminded us all of that truth." Tears welled up in Aaron's eyes, but he blinked them back. Then came the moment no one expected, not even Aaron. "We are offering Aaron a scholarship for full-time piano training," the judge declared. "He will receive professional lessons, performance opportunities, and support to grow further." Gasps filled the room. Several parents stared in disbelief. Some children looked inspired. Aaron covered his mouth with trembling hands. A scholarship, something he never dared dream of, something his mother could never afford. He felt like the world had opened its doors for him, wide, welcoming, golden. The judge stepped closer and handed Aaron a certificate. "You earned this," he said softly. Aaron held it carefully, almost afraid it might disappear if he blinked too long. He had walked into this hall invisible, but he was leaving as someone unforgettable. And while everyone celebrated, one thought repeated itself inside his heart like a gentle melody. One performance changed everything. Aaron walked out of the hall with the same small shoes he arrived in, but his steps were completely different. They were lighter, as if he wasn't walking but floating. The night was cool, the wind gentle, and city lights sparkled like the world was smiling at him. He held the certificate close to his chest, afraid the wind might steal it away, afraid it might all be a dream. But it was real. Every moment, every note, every heartbeat was real. He didn't take a bus home that evening. He ran, through the streets, past tall buildings, across uneven sidewalks. He ran not because he was in a hurry, but because his joy was too big to walk slowly. His breath came in clouds in the night air, his cheeks red, eyes shining like stars. He stumbled once, laughed, kept running. The scholarship paper wrinkled slightly in his fist, but he didn't care. It was the most precious thing he had ever held. When he reached home, their tiny house looked the same, old roof, peeling paint, broken window frame, but tonight it felt different. It felt like the beginning of something new. He pushed open the door gently. His mother sat at the table sewing clothes for extra money, her fingers tired but steady. When she saw Aaron, she smiled softly like she always did, unaware of the miracle he carried in his hands. Aaron walked closer, breathless, unable to speak for a moment. His mother frowned slightly, worried. "Aaron, are you all right?" He nodded quickly, eyes shining with excitement. Slowly, he placed the certificate on the table in front of her. She looked down, confused, then began reading. Her eyes moved across the words slowly, carefully, as if she was afraid to understand too fast. Awarded, full piano scholarship. Training, mentorship, performance opportunities. Chosen for outstanding natural talent. Her lips parted. Her hand trembled. The needle and thread slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor. Aaron waited, heart beating fast, eyes fixed on her face. She looked up at him, tears filling her eyes faster than she could blink them away. But she didn't cry from sadness. She cried from pride, the kind that aches sweetly in the chest. "My boy," she whispered, voice breaking, "you did it." Aaron couldn't hold back anymore. He threw his arms around her, hugged her tightly, tighter than he ever had. She held him close, her tears soaking into his hair. They didn't speak for a long time, they didn't need to. The room was full of everything words couldn't say: sacrifice, love, patience, triumph. When they finally pulled away, his mother cupped his face gently. "You never needed money to be worthy," she said softly. "You needed belief. And you had that even when the world didn't." Aaron smiled through tears, breath shaky but warm. He looked at his keyboard in the corner, chipped keys, cracked frame, silent now, and whispered inside his heart, "Thank you for carrying me this far." That night they celebrated with the simplest dinner, bread, soup, and laughter, but it tasted richer than any feast. They sat side by side, the certificate resting proudly on the table like a trophy. His mother asked him to tell every detail, how people laughed, how they went silent, how applause shook the hall. Aaron described every second with excitement, hands waving, eyes glowing like sparks. His mother listened with full attention, smiling through tears the whole time. Later, when the house fell quiet and Aaron lay in bed, he couldn't sleep. He stared at the dim ceiling, replaying the performance again and again. The keys, the silence, the applause, the moment his life changed forever. For the first time, he felt the future not dark or uncertain, but bright like morning light breaking through clouds. Dark or uncertain, but bright like morning light breaking through clouds. He imagined a real piano, smooth keys under his fingers. He imagined lessons, concerts, crowds waiting for him to play. He imagined his mother in the front row one day, tears in her eyes, not from struggle but from pride. He didn't know exactly how far music would take him, but he knew this: he would go wherever the notes carried him. He would work harder than ever. He would honor the chance life finally gave him. And he would step into tomorrow with courage, because dreams were no longer locked behind glass. He held the keys now. The next weeks passed like a dream Aaron didn't want to wake from. Every morning he woke up early, washed his face with cold water, fixed his old clothes neatly, and carried his scholarship letter with the same care someone carries gold. And every day he traveled across town to the music academy, a building with tall glass windows, echoing hallways, and rooms filled with instruments that shined like stars. The first time Aaron stepped inside, he felt his heart stop. There were pianos everywhere, grand, upright, black, white, old, new, more than he had ever imagined could exist in one place. Students practiced in different rooms, fingers fast, confident, trained. Their notes floated through the corridors like birds. Aaron stood still, eyes wide, breath stuck in his chest. He felt small again, not because he lacked talent, but because he had never been surrounded by so much music before. A teacher with kind eyes approached him. "You must be Aaron," she smiled. "We've been expecting you." Aaron nodded shyly, clutching his bag strap. She guided him to a room where a grand piano sat in the center, polished and perfect. He sat on the round bench nervously, hands shaking slightly. He was used to broken keys, not this beautiful instrument that responded like silk to touch. His teacher waited patiently. "Whenever you're ready," she said softly. Aaron placed his fingers on the keys and began to play. The sound that came out was smooth, rich, alive. Even he was surprised by how different music felt here. His teacher's eyes widened with amazement. She listened without interrupting, without correcting. When he finished, she exhaled a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "You play with feeling," she said. "No technique can replace that." Aaron smiled, small but proud. But not everyone was happy to see him there. Some students whispered in corners. They wore expensive clothes, had private tutors, and years of training. To them, Aaron was an outsider, a child from nothing, given a chance they believed he didn't deserve. One afternoon, a boy named Julian, tall, confident, talented, approached him in the practice room. "You think one performance makes you special," he said coolly. Aaron looked down, surprised by the sharp tone. Julian continued, "We've trained for years, you walked in out of nowhere." Aaron didn't respond. He knew anger wasn't his answer. Instead, he gently touched the piano keys again. Music calmed him when words couldn't. Julian scoffed. "Let's see how long you last." He walked away, but his challenge stayed like a shadow in Aaron's mind. That night, Aaron practiced harder, not to prove himself to anyone, but to honor his dream. He stayed late in the academy, replaying scales, correcting mistakes, building strength in his fingers until they ached. His teacher sometimes found him still there when the sky had already turned dark. "Aaron," she would say softly, "you need rest too." He smiled and nodded, but returned to the piano as soon as she left. Because music was not just practice for him, it was life. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Aaron improved rapidly, faster than anyone expected. His hands grew confident, his timing sharper, his expression deeper. Every note carried history, pain, love, things no wealthy student could imitate with technique alone. Yet challenges didn't end. Sometimes he felt alone. Sometimes whispers hurt more than he admitted. Sometimes he doubted if he belonged. But every time those thoughts tried to break him, he remembered the applause, the hall, his mother's tears of pride, the dream he carried like light inside his chest. He kept going. One evening, as he played a powerful piece, fingers moving like lightning, heart beating like a drum, Julian stood quietly at the door watching. For the first time, there was no jealousy in his eyes, no arrogance. Only respect. When Aaron finished, exhausted but smiling softly, Julian stepped forward slowly. "You didn't give up," he said quietly. Aaron looked at him, unsure what to say. Julian continued, voice gentler than ever before, "Most people who start late can't catch up. You did more than catch up, you're ahead." Aaron blinked, surprised. Julian offered his hand. "Maybe we could practice together sometime." What? Aaron hesitated only a second before taking it. "Sure," he said with a shy smile. From that moment, competition turned into friendship. Jealousy turned into admiration. And Aaron, the boy who once stood alone, now played beside someone who respected him. His teacher watched this new bond from afar and whispered to herself, "That boy is changing more than music here, he's changing hearts." At home, Aaron continued sharing his progress with his mother, every new technique, every new song, every praise from teachers. She listened with shining eyes, pride growing fuller each day. Their home was still small. They were still poor. But happiness filled the rooms like sunlight now. Aaron was no longer just surviving, he was rising, step by step, note by note, dream by dream. Months passed like pages turning in a book Aaron once dreamed of opening. With every sunrise, his skills grew brighter. With every evening, his music reached deeper inside hearts. He learned techniques he never knew existed, practiced for hours until his fingers ached, and poured everything he had into each note like it was his last. One morning, the Academy announced something big, a grand national concert, the largest stage Aaron had ever heard of. Students from across the country would perform. Newspapers, journalists, critics, musicians, everyone important would be there. It was not just a show, it was a life-changing opportunity. Aaron's name was on the list. He froze when he read it. Excitement and fear tangled inside him like two birds fighting for the same sky. His teacher placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You earned this," she said softly. "Now go show the world what only you can." Aaron trained harder than ever. Julian practiced beside him, sometimes competing, sometimes laughing. They pushed each other forward like wind behind sails. Aaron made mistakes, fell short, cried silently some nights, but he never stopped. And then the day arrived. The concert hall was even bigger than the one where his story began. Chandeliers glowed like suns, seats stretched like the sea, and every sound echoed through endless space. Aaron stood backstage wearing a pressed shirt, still old but neatly ironed. His mother sat in the audience, eyes shining, hands trembling. She had never seen so many people in one place. The announcer's voice boomed through speakers. "Next performer, Aaron Hale." The crowd whispered. The name was familiar. Many had heard the story of a poor boy who stunned a hall with his talent. Some doubted the rumor, some believed it, but none were ready for what was coming. Aaron stepped onto the stage. No laughter greeted him this time, no mocking eyes, only silence, deep, curious, breathless silence. He sat at the piano, the wood warm beneath his fingers. This was not the same Aaron who once shook with nerves. He sat like someone who belonged to the instrument, someone who did not come to prove himself but to share what lived inside him. Then he began to play. The first notes were calm, steady, like the slow rise of morning light. The crowd leaned in instantly. The melody grew richer, fuller, then burst open like wings mid-flight. Aaron played not like one trained by years, but like one shaped by life. His music told a story: a small house, a cracked keyboard, a boy practicing under dim light, hungry nights, a mother's love, a dream stronger than poverty. The audience felt it. Every note carried pieces of his soul. People closed their eyes, some letting tears fall. Critics forgot their pens. Cameras froze in the hands of reporters who forgot they were working. Even other performers watching backstage stood still, knowing they were witnessing something rare. Halfway through, Aaron increased the intensity. His fingers moved like lightning, fast, fearless, unstoppable. The hall didn't breathe, it waited. It lived suspended inside his music. When he reached the final passage, a soft, trembling finish that melted like rain into still water, he pressed the last key gently, then lifted his hands like wings settling to rest. Silence followed, not confusion, not doubt, just awe. Then it happened. The hall exploded. Applause rose like thunder, shaking floors, walls, hearts. People stood instantly, a storm of standing ovation. Some clapped with tears running freely. Others cheered loud enough to drown the world. His mother cried the hardest, hands over her mouth, shoulders shaking with pride too big to hold. Aaron bowed, eyes glossy, chest full of more emotion than his body could contain. That night changed his future forever. Journalists rushed to interview him. Music schools offered him advanced training. Concert invitations arrived. Newspapers printed headlines like, "The boy who rose from nothing. Talent greater than circumstance. Piano prodigy from poverty takes the nation's heart." But through it all, Aaron remained the same humble child who once sat alone in a crowded hall. Fame did not change him, music already had. He used his scholarship wisely, improved further, performed in more cities, traveled with orchestras, and soon became a name spoken with respect in the world of music. Not rich in money, rich in purpose, rich in passion. His mother's life changed too. She no longer worked until her hands hurt. Aaron bought her a new sewing machine, then a better home, one where rain no longer dripped through the roof. A place where music filled every room like laughter. And in a corner of that new home sat a gift Aaron bought with his first earnings. A piano, black, glossy, beautiful, not for performance, for memory, for love. Sometimes at night, Aaron played softly while his mother cooked nearby, smiling at the sound that once only lived in dreams. His journey was not perfect, not easy, but it was proof of one beautiful truth: greatness can rise from anywhere. Even from the smallest, poorest corner of the world. Aaron was once the boy who didn't fit the room. Now he filled rooms with music no one could ignore, and every time he played, his story whispered through the notes. Never laugh at someone for starting small. One day, they may finish beyond your wildest dreams.